Corruption by P.K. Armstrong, Chapter 19. Angel had a refreshing weekend with Violet. They stayed at the lake for hours after lunch and went to the mall to shop for more school uniforms. There they found a new comforter set for her bed and then went for Italian ices. Violet had wanted to see Christopher, but he called in response to her text and said he couldn't get away from work. Still, he said hello to Violet and spoke with her a few minutes before ringing off. Angel could tell he was surprised when Violet told him to be careful before she hung up, and she knew she was going to have some explaining to do. Saturday was a lazy day with sleeping in, cooking a big brunch, and then spending most of the afternoon outside as Violet familiarized herself with everything that had grown since she had visited the weekend before. As she watched her sketching some flowers, she decided she would look into getting her a camera so she could take pictures and then sketch when she was away at school. Her dad agreed on Sunday when they went to spend the day and said he would start looking up what would be a good starter camera for her on the internet. Of course, her mom spent Sundays cooking, and Violet often ended up in the kitchen helping, which usually meant tasting everything. Sometimes Angel would sit in the picture window and listen to them giggling in the kitchen and smile, remembering those times with her mother. Sunday evening, Violet always had the three of them to help her with her homework, and then it was back to Angel's house, where she had a bath, washed her hair, repacked her case, and she and Angel read until bedtime. Violet had found Laura Ingalls Wilder books in a box of things Angel's mom kept, and she loved reading the old-fashioned stories. Monday morning, after dropping Violet off to Sinclair's, she headed over to her parents' house as planned, to work on her case. They lived closer in town, and Angel felt she needed to stay in the vicinity. She often worked on the table on the patio, especially if her mother needed to see patients in her office. The early morning traffic was heavy for the small town, but Angel had lived there all her life, and even with the increase in traffic, could safely divide her time between the road and her thoughts. Spending the weekend not only refreshed Angel, but it helped her put her priorities in place. Simon Rain's murder was Christopher's case, not hers. She needed to let him do his job, a job he was very good at. She would focus on Cindy Mailer and proving that she was Violet's mother. She knew at some point she would have to confront Stan Granger, but decided to table that investigative lead for the moment so as not to trample all over Christopher's investigation. Her phone rang as she waited for the light to change. Looking at the caller ID, she sighed heavily as Clark Kincaid displayed across her phone. She thought about ignoring him, but remembered there was something she needed to know. "Good afternoon, Mr. Kincaid." "Mr. Kincaid? Wow, don't you sound official." "Out of the hospital?" "Yeah, just yesterday." He rushed on. "So I guess you have questions." "Oh, just a few," Angel said sarcastically. "So we can meet?" Angel could tell he was smiling, but she was prepared for his suggestion. Moreland Park, in an hour. Moreland Park was the oldest park in the city of Fillmore. It was near downtown and, in the early century, was where the elite of society walked out to show their fashionable clothes, advantageous marriage matches, and appropriate friends. As society as a whole became less impressed with such showy displays of wealth and status, it became a setting for the artistic community. Painters, mimes, sculptors, singers, and musicians would descend on the park and showcase their talents. Years later, after a small redesign, its well-groomed landscape became a tinted wedding reception venue on the weekends. Angel had selected it because even during the week, it was frequented by walkers and joggers, and its picnic tables, although out in the open, allowed for private conversations. She arrived at the park ahead of time, grabbed her bag, and walked deliberately through the park until she found what she wanted, a gazebo with a picnic table. She texted Kincaid her location and waited. He arrived minutes later, using a cane and walking slowly from his recent injuries. He sat across from Angel awkwardly. She knew he was in pain, but wasn't feeling very sympathetic. But still, she tried. How are you feeling? Clark sighed and shifted, trying to get comfortable. Angel gave into her softer side, reached into her bag and took out her Pilates mat that was still folded up within, and handed it over to Clark. He grimaced at her, lifted slightly, and slid the mat between him and the wooden bench. He sunk back down gingerly and grinned at Angel. Better, thanks. Angel jumped right in. Why did you keep the list? I recognized a couple of the names, Clark admitted. Which names? Sorensen and Vernon. Angel remembered the names being on the list. What can you tell me about the cops whose names you recognized? She asked. Clark shrugged. We've crossed paths in court. Their personnel records, questionable procedures, and citizen complaints prove they aren't above taking shortcuts in an investigation. He looked at Angel pointedly. Of course, I saw your boy's name on the list, Roland. Frankly, it surprised me that his name would have the audacity to show up on a list like that, he said snidely. Everyone knows how righteous Roland is. Angel's need for information overpowered her desire to hit Clark in the face. When I found you after you were attacked, you implied you may have an idea who attacked you. She left the question open-ended and waited. For the first time, Clark looked more than just physically uncomfortable. He began to fidget and was clearly deciding how much he wanted to tell Angel. Her patience was waning. Clark, she threatened. There was another name on the list. I didn't know him personally or professionally, but I met him later. Angel was confused. Explain, please, and opened up her bag again and handed him one of the waters she had fortuitously brought with her. Clark screwed off the top and took a big drink. When I came out of the courtroom after Joshua's arraignment, Sorensen and Vernon were in the hallway speaking to another cop. Angel raised an eyebrow in question, and Clark laughed. I recognized the shoes. Only a cop would wear those shoes. Anyway, the group moves outside, and as they part, Sorensen says, Catch you later, or see you later, Granger. Granger. Angel schooled her features and kept from reacting to Roland's ex-partner's name. Go on, she encouraged. Sorensen stopped at the coffee cart, and I walked up to him and said, Hey, is that a new conspirator, or is he already on the list? What did Sorensen say? Nothing. He just gave me a strange look, grabbed his coffee from the barista, and walked off. Angel took a drink from her water bottle and thought for a minute. The park traffic had picked up even though lunch was over, and Angel watched a Pilates in the park group begin spacing out and unrolling their exercise mats. A thought struck, and she looked back at Clark Kincaid. Sorensen, Vernon, and Granger. Were they in the courtroom during your son's arraignment? Clark thought for a minute. I don't recall, he said, apologetically. I was focusing on Joshua. Why do you ask? Angel ignored the question and asked her own. So you think Sorensen or Vernon attacked you because of what you said? Clark shrugged again. I'm not sure, but that look, the look he gave me was full of murderous savagery. He spied the look on Angel's face. What are you thinking? Angel shook her head, not quite sure of the answer. What do you see in him? Angel looked at Clark, and since she didn't react, he decided to go on. I mean, Roland is good looking. I imagine he could probably get any woman he wanted. But why be with someone you have to worry about whether or not he is coming home every night? Now an attorney. Handsome, great money, no danger. He stopped as Angel eyed his injuries. Angel stared at Clark Kincaid and then spoke her revelation. Please do not tell me you kept the list solely because Roland's name was on it, she exclaimed. No, he scoffed. Come on, a list of cops, some of them dirty in the hands of a dead man? I would have been remiss had I not kept a copy. But you didn't, did you? Keep a copy? You kept the list and didn't turn it in to the police. It's in my wall safe at home. The police can't be trusted to police themselves, Clark retorted. So then what were you planning to do with it? I wasn't sure exactly. Why confront David Sorensen? That wasn't planned. It was just a passing remark, a joke, as it were. Turns out it wasn't funny. I never dreamed. His voice faded. Angel, what is going on? A little shocked at Clark's use of her nickname, Angel faltered. I'm not sure, Clark, she obfuscated. But if your hunch is correct, then Sorensen and his cronies may think you know more than you do. You need to watch your back. Clark thought a second and then slowly started to smile. Maybe I should hire some personal security. You wouldn't be able to. Angel stopped his question with a raise of her hand. No, Clark, I'm sure you have someone you can tap for that task. I have another case. Clark shrugged. Can't blame a guy for trying. Angel had walked Clark back to his car and then doubled back to where she had left hers. She got in, reached for her thermos, and poured some coffee. She believed what Clark concluded was true. He was attacked because of his careless remark to David Sorensen. Of course, in all actuality, it could have been totally unrelated. After all, Clark was an attorney. Angel smiled. If it was true, then the breakup of the dirty cop's criminal enterprise by the task force was not the end of it. Something else was going on, and most importantly, she wanted to know if it put Violet in any danger. She wanted to find out more about Stan Granger and Cindy Mailer. She picked up her phone and dialed. Dad, do you think Ruth Mayberry would be willing to talk to me?